STEM Science.
All right, everybody, let's take a look at one type of creating a static charge, and this is called charging by contact. And there's two types. The first one is charging by contact through the use of friction. And this is a quick overview, and this is again to help sort of illustrate the notes that we covered during class. So again, what I want to stress here is that we are using minus and pluses here to indicate charges. These are the result of not just one electron, but literally millions of electrons that we see. So these are like, this negative charge here is representative of a whole bunch of electrons, because I don't want anyone thinking that there are just simply 6 electrons in this particular object, when if this was, say, a piece of cloth or a piece of ebonite rod, you would have trillions of different atoms in there that would make up that object, and with that, trillions of electrons and trillions of protons. And so certainly we're not looking at just 6 protons here or 6 electrons, but really what we're trying to indicate here is just a representation of trying to keep tabs on just overall numbers of negative and positive charges. And keep in mind, these are linked to the protons and electrons, but certainly not 6 electrons and certainly not just 6 protons. We're talking about a lot, because there are a lot of atoms that would make up this sample that we're looking at right here. All right? So let's do this look of charges. Let's check this out. We've got roughly the same number of positive charges as we would negative charges, and because of that, this is a neutral object, and you'll see here that the same thing applies down here. So what we're looking at are two neutral objects. Now, when we're talking about charging by friction, this is going to involve us bringing these two objects into contact with each other. That's the reason why we call it charge by contact. So it's going to involve us sort of bringing this object down like this, and not just touching, but actually sort of moving them across each other, friction, rubbing against each other. And what we're looking at here are two particular materials that are different. Often when we're talking about charging by friction, one of them is going to be a sort of a non-conductor type of material, and the other one can be another non-conductor or another insulator type of material, or it could be a metal. But what we're looking at here are two different types of material, and ideally one is going to have an easier time sort of giving up its electrons to the other material. And like I said, one of these materials is probably going to have to be, or it needs to be, an insulator, or something that's not going to be a conductor. And we are going to sort of simulate this friction there, and you can see that box sort of moving back and forth, and that's us sort of rubbing these two materials together. And again, depending on the two materials that we're looking at, if this is indeed successful in creating a charge through friction, what's happening is that we're seeing the movement of these negative charges, again, linked to the electrons inside of these materials. And we would start to see these negative charges sort of moving from one object to another. And this is, again, the result of this friction between these two objects. And you can see here now that we've had a transfer of charges, negative charges. And again, what I want to stress here is that it's only the negative charges that will move, not the positive charges, because again, if we're linking these positive charges to protons, we all know that protons do not easily move out of an atom or out of a substance, because that would have some serious implications for the atom itself. So we're just looking at the movement of negative charges, which are again connected to electrons. All right, so let's take a look. What do we have here? We can separate these two objects, and again, just looking at the overall number of charges, you can see that on this object here, we have now got 6 sort of positives and 9 negative charges. What this would tell us is that we've got an abundance of negative charges compared to positive charges, and as a result, this would be a negatively charged object. Whereas down here, you can see that we've got those 6 positive charges here, and only 3, substantially less, but only 3 negative charges sort of represented here, and as a result, this is a positively charged object. So we can call this negatively charged object, positively charged object. This is the creation of two charged objects through contact, and specifically through the use of friction. And if we were to sort of review this, you can see these are the steps that we took. Two neutral objects, and through friction and the ability of one object to give up its electrons to the other object, we then have this transfer of electrons, or these negative charges, from one object to the other, resulting in an overall negative charge on one object and an overall positive charge on the other one. And again, depending on what these objects are made up of, it could have easily been that, this object here would have given up its electrons to this object here, and then we just simply would have flipped it. This is going to bring us to the next topic a little bit later, but what I want you to understand here is how friction can create two charged objects from two neutral objects.